The air was still in the early morning light. A soft mist clung to the battered trees outside Sevastopol. Broken branches, twisted metal, and bloodied earth blurred into one long scar on the Crimean soil. The German shelling had stopped just before dawn, and in the silence that followed, she waited. Hidden in a hollowed-out crater, Lyudmila Pavlichenko lay perfectly still, cheek against the worn wood of her Mosin Nagant rifle. She could hear the faint clink of a soldier's canteen, the low murmur of footsteps in the rubble, and then a helmet moved into view. German field gray. She inhaled, held, exhaled. The rifle cracked. The man dropped. One shot, one kill. It was not her first, and it would not be her last. By the end of the war, Lyudmila would rack up 309 confirmed kills, making her the most successful female sniper in history. But she was not alone. Thousands of women across the Soviet Union, young, underfed, underestimated, picked up rifles and learned to kill. They weren't just fighting the Nazis, they were fighting to be taken seriously by their own commanders. To prove that skill, discipline, and courage had nothing to do with gender. This is their story. When Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, the invasion was massive. 3 million troops poured across the Soviet border in the largest land invasion in human history. The Soviet Union, caught off guard, poorly equipped, and led by officers still reeling from Stalin's purges, struggled to hold the line. Cities fell, villages burned, civilians died in the hundreds of thousands. And Soviet women, watching their homes destroyed and their families killed, flooded recruitment offices. They didn't want to knit socks or hand out bread. They wanted rifles. Officially, the Soviet Union was the only major power in World War II to allow women in front-line combat roles. But that didn't mean they were welcomed with open arms. Commanders scoffed, instructors sneered, male recruits whispered behind their backs. But there were exceptions. The Red Army's sniper schools, desperate for skilled shooters, became one of the few places where a woman could earn respect through sheer deadly precision. In 1943, the Central Women's Sniper Training School was established. Over 2,000 women graduated and were sent to the front. Most were in their late teens or early 20s. Many were students, some were athletes, some had never even held a rifle before. But within months, they were killers. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was one of the first. Born in Ukraine in 1916, she had been a competitive marksman before the war. When the Nazis invaded, she was 24 and already studying history at Kyiv University. She joined the Red Army and insisted on being assigned as a sniper. The recruiters laughed. They told her women belonged in the kitchen. She proved them wrong. Within weeks of joining the 25th Rifle Division, she had 17 confirmed kills. By the end of her first year, the number had climbed past 100. Snipers weren't just sharpshooters. They were patient, cold, calculated. They could wait in the same position for 18 hours, barely breathing. They memorized enemy patrol schedules. They tracked wind speed, humidity, and the angle of the sun. And when they pulled the trigger, they made it count. Lyudmila often worked in pairs, one sniper, one spotter. She preferred to move at night, to crawl through rubble, to take positions in trees, basements, collapsed buildings. She was wounded 4 times in battle. Once, she continued fighting with shrapnel embedded in her shoulder. She said later, "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" Lyudmila became a national hero, but she also became a target. The Germans knew her name. They called out to her over loudspeakers. Sometimes they tried to bribe her. "Pavlichenko, come over to our side. We'll make you a German officer. We'll give you chocolate." When that didn't work, they threatened her. "If we catch you, we'll tear you into 309 pieces." But Lyudmila was just one of many. Other Soviet women snipers became legends in their own right. Rosa Shanina was just 20 years old when she joined the 184th Rifle Division. She had 59 confirmed kills, many of them while under direct enemy fire. Her accuracy and calm under pressure earned her a reputation as the terror of East Prussia. She kept a war diary where she wrote, "I've killed a man. I'm not proud, but I'm not ashamed either. He would have killed my comrades." Rosa was killed in action in 1945, shielding a wounded soldier with her own body. Nina Petrova, in contrast, was 48 years old when she became a sniper. A former teacher and athlete, she logged 122 confirmed kills and became one of the oldest snipers in the war. She died in 1945 when her car ran off the road during a mission. Alia Moldagulova, another rising star, had over 78 confirmed kills before being wounded and killed in hand-to-hand combat. She was posthumously named a hero of the Soviet Union. In total, more than 2,000 Soviet women served as snipers during World War II. They killed an estimated 11,000 enemy soldiers, and they did it under conditions most people couldn't imagine. They were often sent in with outdated gear. They wore oversized men's uniforms, ill-fitting boots, and carried rifles longer than they were tall. In the field, they faced not just the enemy, but frostbite, starvation, and exhaustion. Some endured sexual harassment from their own commanders. Others were deliberately sent on suicidal missions, seen as expendable because they were women. But they kept fighting. They earned the respect of their comrades, eventually, and of their enemies. Captured German soldiers reported being terrified of female Soviet snipers, many believing they were especially cruel or supernatural. But in truth, these women were just relentless, quiet, steady, precise, and deadly. In 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was pulled from the front lines after a fourth injury. The Soviet High Command realized she had become too valuable to risk losing. She was sent on a diplomatic tour of the United States and Canada, becoming the first Soviet citizen to be received at the White House. She met with President Franklin D. Roosevelt. She became friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. When speaking at rallies, she was often asked by American reporters about her hair, her makeup, her uniform. She answered, "I wear my uniform with honor. It has my medals. It has the blood of my comrades." Crowds loved her. She spoke boldly, unapologetically, and she shamed the world into remembering that women were fighting and dying on the front lines of the largest war in history. After the war, most female snipers faded into quiet lives. Many were denied veteran benefits. Some suffered trauma, depression, or untreated wounds. Few spoke about their service. Lyudmila Pavlichenko returned to her university and completed her degree. She became a historian. She never remarried. When she died in 1974, at the age of 58, she was buried with full military honors. Today, their names are largely forgotten outside of Eastern Europe, but the women who held their rifles steady in the snow, who waited in silence for the perfect shot, who fought for a country that barely respected them, changed the war. They weren't symbols, they weren't side stories, they were warriors. They held the line when the men couldn't. They did their job without complaint. And when the time came, they pulled the trigger without hesitation. They left behind no memoirs of glory, no dramatic farewell speeches, just dog tags in the dirt, spent casings in the snow, and names carved into the buttstocks of rifles that outlived them. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war